Welcome to the Talking Devils podcast with me, Dave Murphy. And today we're delighted to be joined by a new former United player, current Morecambe centre-back, Scott Wootton. Scott, how you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it. But yeah, I'm good. Obviously, pleasing after a good win for the first team at United. So yeah, all good.
So a little bit of background about Scott for those who don't know him. Scott played 4 times for Manchester United, twice in the Champions League, twice in the League Cup. One of those League Cup games was a infamous game against Chelsea. We may not want to go in too much into that, but again, played 4 times for Manchester United. Delighted to have you on. Absolutely delighted. Myself and Wayne were talking about this during the week. We're very excited. I think we're at the same level of excitement as a former Portuguese player that's just come back to the club. You played yesterday, Sheffield Wednesday for Morecambe. Good win, 1-0. How did that go?
Yeah, it was good. Good victory for us. Put us comfortably in mid-table. We rode all a bit similar to the game today, actually, for United. We rode all up a bit at times. They were probably the better team overall. But we got a goal from a set piece and hung on towards the end. So, you know, I think about coming the end of the season, you're not going to think back to how you played or how the game went. Ultimately, it was 3 points and it was a good victory for us.
Strong enough to go up this year?
I think that'd be very ambitious, but you know, stranger things have happened. The Oval have been up into the Championship. Wickham a couple of seasons ago got promoted. They were the favourites to go down. You know, so you know anything can happen in football, as we know.
Yeah, tough league, League One and the Championship as well. But so, best of luck. I mean, the playoffs is there. That's always a great option for clubs going up as well. So we'll keep an eye on you throughout the season, and we expect you to chip in with a few goals as well. So, for every goal you get, Wayne will I don't know, he'll put a competition up for a book maybe.
Oh, all right.
There's the pressure.
Could have been much worse.
If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to click on the subscribe button. If you're listening on podcast, please give us a rating and review. And be sure to check out talkofthedevils.co.uk for articles and stats, including, you know, every reserve team appearance Scott made for the club and first team appearances. And Wayne's matchday column from today's game is also up there. Very insightful Twitter feed that you put up there yesterday about Ronaldo, Wayne, which got massive response back. So let's jump right into it. Manchester United 1, Wolves 0. Wasn't a classic. At times, you know, it was looked like, you know, we had no game plan. We really didn't. Fred will be singled out, I think, as a problem. We all know that. David De Gea with I don't even know how he got to that second save. It was a David De Gea of old. Scott, I'm going to start with you. How did you see the game? You know, lucky to get away with 3 points, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, nowhere near the levels that we know that they can play at. Just looked quite lackluster, I felt. The build-up play was really slow. Very similar to last week, I think, at Southampton. Some similarities in the two performances away from home. Yeah, like I say, it just looked slow. There wasn't real pace and tempo with the passing and the movement. And I thought Wolves were a much better side. And like you say, we very, very lucky to come away with 3 points. But ultimately, come the end of the season, you know, like I just said about Morecambe, you're not going to look back and think, oh, we didn't play very well at Wolves. Or even as fans, you're not going to remember the Wolves. All you know is that it's 3 points, clean sheet, and something to build on moving forward.
I mean, it's at times like this we throw out the old cliches of, you know, that's champions win games like that. You know, winning when you're playing bad is a good thing. But I think we've been down this road too many times before where we've seen performances like that. I mean, you only have to look back 7 days against Southampton to see that we had a very similar performance. We all knew that we needed a centre back. We got a world-class one. We all knew that we needed a right winger. We got a world-class one. We all know that we need a defensive midfielder. I don't believe we're going to get one of them by Tuesday. But then right out of the blue, Cristiano Ronaldo comes to Manchester United. And it excites everyone and makes everyone happy. That said, bringing back Cristiano is an absolutely fantastic thing for us. I think it's going to lift the club. We still need a defensive midfielder. Would you agree on that? Or do you think Scott McTominay can become that player to grow into, you know, the player that we need in that position?
I'm not quite sure. I think he's not a young player anymore, McTominay, is he? I mean, if the more experience he gets, obviously the more adaptable he'll be coming to playing in that team and at that level. I mean, he's played a lot of games now for the club and in the Premier League. Yeah, I do think that is the one area of the pitch that's lacking at the minute. I mean, the Fred, McTominay, Matic, they're good players, but I am always looking at United thinking of Carrick, Hargreaves, Keane, Scott. It's hard not to compare them to the players of the past that were winning the league and getting to Champions League finals, etc. And I don't feel that they're at that same standard or that level. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're good players, really good players. They'll play probably 20, 25 games a season for Man United and playing the cups and stuff like that. But you're trying to compete with City, Chelsea, Liverpool. I feel like they're better equipped in them areas.
With a better defensive midfielder, and we always have this conversation, myself and Wayne, and I talk with other the supporters about it. Paul Pogba doesn't seem to play well when supposedly defensive midfielder is not playing well. When Pogba moves into the centre, he seems to be very lackluster, like he was today. I mean, he's deemed a world-class player. Should he be able to adapt? I mean, we have a player that when he goes to France, he's a completely different player. What do we need to do to get the best out of Paul Pogba on a consistent basis?
It's very difficult. I think he was unbelievable for Juventus because he had Andre Pirlo sat behind him and Marquisio. So he had a sort of the reins were off him. France, he plays with N'Golo Kante, who is an absolutely incredible player who does all the nitty-gritty work, so to speak, that, again, gives him the license to go. And I think one of the issues with Pogba is because he was the world record transfer fee and had been at United before, people automatically look at him to be the complete player. It just doesn't always work like that. His game is what it is. It's off the cuff. He does look a bit lackluster at times, but that's just his character and his personality. That's how he plays the game. That's how he's played the same way for France and Juventus. That's, I don't think you're ever going to change that. And going back to how to get the best out of him, I do think a top player beside him that gives him the freedom and the reins to drift around the pitch. Some of his passes today were outstanding. I thought one touch in behind. That's him. Sometimes people will look at his body language and things like that, but it's very difficult to get these things out of players.
I mean, that's a really good assessment of that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The fee seems to dictate people's thoughts on certain players. They can't control it. I mean, Harry Maguire was 80 million. And what I mean by that is we got Harry Maguire come in at 80 million. Varane came in at, in the mid-30s. And now we've got Ronaldo at 18 million. It's just an absolutely crazy, transfer business that all clubs do. The problem is that if you want a certain player, you have to pay the price that the club wants. I remember, Fergie came under a lot of stick for paying 18 million for Michael Carrick. But that was the value that Tottenham had put on him, and Manchester United wanted him. And even, a couple of seasons in, 18 million was a snip. I know we look at transfer fees nowadays, and it's just, Michael Carrick was 18 million and became one of our, best players, and left the club, as a player with his head held high and had a phenomenal career. Now he's a coach. It is a great point about Pogba is that, we naturally think that just because he cost 80 odd million that he should come as a complete package. That said, I personally believe he could offer more at times. I think his body language at times is very lackluster. And I do think that he needs to shine a bit more. And it brings me on to my next question there, which I'm going to start up with you, Wayne. I mean, now that we've got Cristiano Ronaldo coming back, is this going to help Pogba in any way to lift his game? I mean, where do we see Pogba fitting into this, this Manchester United side in regard to how he's going to move himself forward now with Ronaldo in the team?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question. On the face of it, they're two separate things, aren't they, really? Because they're two separate players. But the issue that you've got is that Pogba has been playing his best football on the left. And United now have all these players that can play on the left and play their best football on the left. So it's a difficult one. Obviously, Ronaldo's going to play up front. We know that. He's going to be the number 9. He's not going to be coming in from the wings like he used to do. and no, should he? You know, that's what we've got, and we've got one of the world's best at doing that. So you use what you can around him. Pogba playing like he did today, I think Scott was right. Like the when you look at the actual game, as poor as we were, all of the creativity came from Paul in the middle. So what you need is that right partner for him. And it is a difficult one because they have to complement the skills. I mean, Scott, you would have played behind Paul, right? You know, in the reserves. So what kind of, are you talking like a Kante? I mean, they're talking like, you know, he's Basuma, even Neves, although I don't know if he'll be very happy to join us after what happened today. But I think Fred's not a complementary midfielder for him. No. The thing that I do think is, with the signing of Ronaldo, and you've both talked about Michael Carrick, I can remember the 2006 pre-season when we signed Carrick, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's a good player, but he's not a Roy Keane replacement, and also he's not going to bridge the gap from what we had to going to Chelsea." But he did. He like changed the entire dynamic of the side. You just don't know how it's going to work. Now, I'm not saying Ronaldo fix what happens in midfield, but I do think that there are other things to think about. For example, that Pogba one that you both sort of talked about there. Pogba is going to have to move. He's going to have to go in the middle. You can't not play him because he's been United's most influential and creative player. I think that it's fair to say he's probably outshined Fernandes in the early games of the season, even taking into account that Fernandes scored a hat-trick in the first game. Pogba was better in that game. So yeah. It's a tough thing, and it really, for me, boils down to who you partner him with. I think Scott's right in what he says about McTominay. Is he at that age where you can't teach that old dog new tricks? You know, because I think that he's probably got the skill set, the better skill set out of the players that we've got to sort of say, if you just hold yourself a little bit more disciplined. But then you're losing a lot of Scott's, his ambitiousness. He does sort of tigerishly go into tackles, and he does break forward, and he can score good goals as well. It's a tricky one, and I'm like you, Dave. I don't know if that means that the well is dry. Do we not sign anyone? And it's going to have to mean that the solution comes from within. You know, we are going to have to find that solution from within. Does it come from McTominay? I think he's got the better skill set for it than Fred, and the better legs for it than Matic. But he doesn't have the snappiness of Fred, and he doesn't have the experience of Matic. Do you know what I mean? So there are a couple of things that, if you could give those things to McTominay, he's obviously the perfect partner for him. But I do think in this situation, you've got to play Pogba. He's probably going to play in the middle. I'm sure Scott will remember as well. There was a game when we played against Spurs, the one where we were 2-0 down at half-time, and Fergie just threw Berbatov, Tevez, Ronaldo, and Rooney all on. He said, "Oh, go on, just go and play." And we did, and we scored 5 goals. Sometimes I think that the combination of players that we've got is like that, and I don't know how it's going to work. Today it didn't. We were very lucky to get away with it because that midfield just didn't work. It was like, I don't know how that midfield, the defence and attack were just not held together by anything. It was an abyss in there. We were very lucky, obviously. Varane setting up Greenwood relay. It was a moment of brilliance from Greenwood. But yeah, I know I'm talking about the game there, and you asked about Pogba. For me, he plays in the middle. You've got to find a partner for him, and it's probably going to have to come from within. And the best man for the job at the moment is McTominay. I just don't understand why he didn't play Van der Beek, but then he sees him every day. He knows what he can.
But to counter that argument, he obviously sees Fred every day. So, you know, for me, it's kind of like, I mean, we could talk about this all day about Fred. You are right. In the bigger games, he seems to play a lot better against the likes of Liverpool, City, people like that. But in games like today, where it's scrappy and it's disjointed, I think he just, at times, he looks clueless. I want to switch gears now over to Scott to ask him the question about David De Gea and Dean Henderson has been going on since last season. We have 2 number ones, let's be honest. We have 2 players that are capable of being our number one. For me, David De Gea is probably the best shot stopper on the planet at the moment. But I do believe that Dean Henderson commands his box a hell of a lot better than David De Gea. Scott, as a defender, and it's kind of a double question. Do we do we stick with De Gea, or do we go with Dean Henderson? And the second question is going to be, who would you prefer to have behind you in those situations? You prefer to have someone that's a good shot stopper? I prefer someone, in my opinion, like Dean Henderson, that commands his 18-yard box, constantly talking to his defenders, but is still very young in his professional career. So sorry for the double question.
No, it's fine. I think De Gea has had a great start to the season. I think he was incredible for a 4 or 5 year period where he was winning, player of the year every year, it seemed, at the club. There's no doubt he had a dip. I think after the tournament with Spain, I think he made a big mistake for Spain, and then there was no doubt that affected his confidence and his presence on the pitch. He just didn't look the same. I'm sure he would admit that. And I think, unfortunately for Dean Henderson, he picked up an injury in pre-season, didn't he? And it made the manager, it made Ollie's decision easy because he didn't have a decision. Obviously, De Gea played because Henderson was injured. And I think he's been great the first 3 games. So at the minute, I don't see any way of Henderson being the number one, because if he did put him in to be the number one goalkeeper, that would be a massive call, and it'd be the end of De Gea for sure, because I think he's done really well. So to drop him now, I just don't see how he would do it, because I think he was brilliant today, and I think he's had a really good start to the season. And there's no reason why he can't recapture his form of a few years ago. Players go through dips. His confidence will be sky high at the minute.
Yep.
If he can get back to his best, then I think it will be an easy decision for Ollie. And then obviously that's not what Dean Henderson will want. He'll want to go and play. I'm sure he seems like I know a few lads who have played with him. They say he's really confident about himself, really sure of himself, believes that he should be the number one goalkeeper at Man United. So it's a decision I don't think many people would envy Ollie of having to make. But I think for now, obviously the injury's gone massively against Henderson, and there's obviously given De Gea the chance to go and take the share back and keep it as his number one and play. And I think he's more than done well enough in the first few games to have that number one shirt and make Henderson really, really push him and fight for it. To the second question, it's funny, isn't it, when you say keepers, shot stoppers, and people go, "Oh, he should be a good stopper." But there is obviously a difference in goalkeepers. Some are better shot stoppers, some are better, like you say, commanding the area, some better at coming for crosses. I think as a centre back, coming for crosses is a big one. And really, there's nothing worse as a defender and the ball's coming over your head and you're not sure, you don't hear anything from your keeper, and there's that slight bit of indecision. There's nothing better, especially late on in games or corners, and balls are being bombarded into your box, and you just hear big, loud, bold shout of keepers, and the keeper just comes and plucks the ball out there. It's the best. Such a good feeling as a defender. So yeah, if you could, it's like going back to the midfield talk, isn't it? If you could pick all the different, because every player has pros and cons. So it'd be lovely if you could pluck little bits of each people's game and put it together. These are the difficulties that managers have, and this is why they get paid all that money to make these big decisions. And like you say, they see these people every day in training, and they go off their decisions. And but I think it's a nice problem for them to have with the goalkeepers for sure.
We just had a comment in by Jason Prime saying Varane dealt with almost everything today. What a debut! You as a centre back, how did you see his debut today? I mean, for me, it looked like it was the complete debut. We looked a little bit more assured at the back. How did you see his debut for Manchester United today?
Yeah, I thought he done really well. I thought it was a really positive debut. Never easy coming from different country, complete, especially as a centre back. I think obviously the Premier League is known for being a lot more physical.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a real awakening to him as well, because Wolves had some really good counter attacks early on in the game. And he'd probably think, bloody hell, he might not have got that in Spain. The pace, the speed of the attacks is probably different to over here. So, he might take some time to really gel and get used to it. But I thought for the debut, he was spot on. He had a couple of good big headers towards the end of the game as well. And I think he's a fantastic centre. I think him and Van Dijk are out on their own, in my opinion, as centre backs in world football. I think he just ticks every box. The two of them: 6'4", 6'5", quick, strong, good on the ball, brave, makes good decisions. I think he's superb. I've been a huge admirer of his for many, many years, because I think Man United tried to sign him before he went to Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And I I'm sure I read or heard that the French connection with Zinedine Zidane pushed that over the line for Madrid. But it makes you think what a player he would have been for all these years for United. But it's great that he's only 28, so he's still got many years left. World Cup winner. I think he ticks every box as a central defender for sure.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head there with one thing, and that's it was his decision making. He didn't lunge in. There was a couple of attacks by Wolves where, I don't want to be disrespectful to Lindelof, but he would have made. I think he would have made that lunge pretty early on, and more than likely, that's a 50-50 at that point then, because if he goes past you, you're done. You're on the ground. You really can't get back. But the one thing I liked about Varane was he wasn't making those lunges. He was pushing players out. He was making that last-minute decision what to do, or last-second decision. And there was a couple of crosses as well where he just waited and blocked it. He could go out for corners. But in the past, we've seen some of our defenders not being, very, very smart in those positions. So I think it's going to be a massive lift for us. I think it's going to be a massive lift in that back four as a unit. So jumping on to our transfer business, we brought in Sancho, we brought in Varane, and we brought in, Ronaldo. It looks like that will probably be it for Manchester United. Scott, I'm going to ask you your rating out of 10 for our transfer business so far. We only have 2 days left. If we're going to bring anyone in now, I don't think it's going to be anyone of the caliber that we want for a defensive midfielder. But how would you see our transfer business this summer?
I think it's probably been the best window for the club since Ferguson left. I think, like you say, they filled the positions that were crying out to be filled. Sancho, to be fair, I do think the club need credit for how they've gone about it, because they've come under a lot of stick in the post-Ferguson era about recruitment, because recruitment's not being good enough. Clubs have overtaken United, and it's been nowhere near good enough with some of the signings. But obviously they were heavily linked last summer. They waited, obviously played the game really well, and got him for a lot cheaper this year. Varane at 40 million. It's an absolute steal in my opinion. Yeah. Ronaldo, I mean, you don't need to even speak about what a signing that is. So yeah, I think it's the best window. We were crying out for a faster centre back. We've got that. Sancho's numbers, stats wise, in the last few years in Dortmund have been incredible. Hopefully, if he can get anywhere near that, he'll be an unbelievable signing for 70 million. Again, I think that's a good price for his age. I always remember Ferguson saying as well, when you were paying 30 million for Rooney and Ferdinand at that time, that's like say 100 million now. You had them players for 10 years plus.
Yeah.
If Sancho can stay at United for the rest of his career, it's an absolute steal of a price. And if he can chip in with the goals and assists he was doing over in Germany, he'll be an unbelievable signing, I believe. Obviously, Ronaldo, he's going to bring goals. I think you said earlier on, Wayne, he's not going to be the same player. That's just obvious for the last, I don't know, maybe going back 4, 5, 6 years when he was playing for Real Madrid and Juventus, he completely changed. He's not going to be many tricks, step overs. He's not going to be that flying winger, cutting inside, shooting. He's going to be getting involved in the build-up play a little bit, but his sole focus will just be ruthless and goals. And again, there's been games where in the past couple of seasons at United where they've dominated the game and everyone's saying, just need that clinical striker. Well,
yeah.
There's no one. His goal record is just the best ever, isn't it? There's always obviously debate about Messi and Ronaldo and who's the better player, but Ronaldo's goal-to-game record is just scary good. I mean, the interesting point is Lukaku has obviously made a great start. I'm pretty sure as Ronaldo he scored more goals than him in the last 2 seasons in Serie A.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be an absolutely incredible signing, and you can't even imagine the impact that would have in a dressing room. When you're at a club and you make a signing and everyone knows he's meant to be a good player, and he comes in, it just gives everything. The training standard goes up, the professionalism will go up. People will be imagine Mason Greenwood now. He must be absolutely. He's going to be training with this guy every day. The things he's going to teach him, the bits of advice about goal scoring. It's just going to be such a huge lift. You can't even imagine being in that dressing room now. How excited the players will be, and how they'll be so excited for them to get back on Old Trafford and be in in training every single day with him. It'd be incredible.
Roy Keane said today, and we all know how often Roy hands out compliments to players. Roy Keane today said a few quotes, and they were like phenomenal. The guy's a freak. He's a fitness fanatic. And the one thing that struck me the most was he said he's the most intelligent player that he's ever played with. And to couple that with what you just said of a player like him coming into the dressing room, we've seen how the United players have reacted all week. They're like school kids. They're like the fans. They're giddy. I've never seen anything like this. I really haven't. I mean, the last time we seen the fans being, disunited and this giggly was when Ferguson convinced Cantona to come back, and, he came back, and we were, the euphoria around Old Trafford was unbelievable. To me, this is bigger, and maybe because it's social media involved, and it just seems like everyone is. I've got many Liverpool fans as friends, many Chelsea fans as friends, and they're not happy. They're absolutely not happy. They made different excuses when we bought Sancho and Varane of, you take a step back when you go back from Real Madrid, and is Sancho really that good? But here they are talking about a 36-year-old, and I can't really I can't really read out the tweets that I got because we're on live air. So they're not happy at all, and it's an absolutely phenomenal signing. Your paths crossed over during your career at Old Trafford for one season. Any insight into, as Roy would call him, a phenomenal?
Yeah, the only thing, like I say, I was very young, and as a first-year scholar, wouldn't really. I think we might have trained with the first team once as a group, so I never really got to see him close up. The only thing, what we used to do though, we would obviously be in before the first team and reserves, and we'd have jobs and stuff, and we'd have everything. We'd train earlier, so quite often when we would finish training, we'd just walk by the first team pitch and watch the training, and then as soon as it finished, we'd go in and whatnot. And I just remember one thing: he had these like ankle weights, and he was just really slowly jogging, doing like step overs and stuff with the ball. And it's the only thing that sticks out to me in my mind that I can remember. And obviously, it was to sort of like an extra training that was making him do step overs quicker or something. But I just remember, it's just what sticks out in my head. I remember him just dribbling with the ball, really slowly jogging, but his step overs were really quick. I remember someone saying, he put weights around his ankles to do step overs. I think it was one of the guys in the gym, one of the fitness coaches says that's what he does. But yeah, I mean, incredible professional. You could see that from afar. Like I said, there wasn't loads of interaction with the first team, but we were there with them every day. You'd have lunch together and stuff, and just this was the time he was absolutely unbelievable for Man United. I mean, some of the goals and some of his performances were just off the scale, weren't they, before he obviously got that move. So yeah, I just think it's an unbelievable sign. Like I say, can't think. I agree with you, Dave, and I can understand why people might say, Varane, he's had his best years, he's won everything, he's lost his hunger, possibly Sancho, it's different, but you guaranteed goals for what, 15 seasons? Has he scored less than 25 goals in 15 years? I don't know the exact stats. Like, it's just incredible numbers. Just so hungry for goals, and goals are the most important thing in football. How many games is he going to score and make the difference in for United?
With that said, we spoke about our transfers. We got arguably 3 world-class players in. Wayne, I'm going to jump to you and put you on the spot. Can we win the title, or because there's a difference between being able to win the title and being in contention. Are we still in that stage where we can challenge, but we may not have everything we need to win the league? Because Chelsea are very strong, City are very strong, Liverpool are very strong. I know Leicester have had a mixed bag start of the season, but I can see them. They still have a very good foundation of a team. They're going to be in there. Spurs, the quote Fergie, lads, it's only Spurs. I'm not too sure about them. I mean, the Harry Kane thing is still going to hang over that club for a while. Are we seriously in this title hunt, or are we just part of a group that nestles in behind the likes of City and Chelsea?
Good question. I think what we've talked about today is what the deficiency is in the team. The midfield deficiency. So that's there, and let's presume that stays there. Let's flip the conversation and say that in the big games last season, Ollie was good to get results. We've seen that he's a good manager at sort of engineering results in big games. What we were missing in the littler games, with all respect to those, was those players to break it down and sometimes to control the games. So you've got two aspects there. You've nailed one aspect because you've got Ronaldo, and I'm sure Sancho will pick up and get into gear, and perhaps he'll be elevated by Ronaldo coming. You would presume so. In the deficiencies that we've got in the side, you would think we don't have a title-winning side in us. But there's just something in me that I'm going to look at this and think it's going to be different what we're bringing into the side. So we're not quite sure how it's going to happen. We're not sure how it's going to be settling with Ronaldo coming into the side. Everything about that forward 6 players is a dynamic that we're not aware of. And that's what gets me a little bit more excited about it, because I think we already had the basis of players to win those bigger games last season, or at least get good results from them. Now, the other games, Ronaldo should have a field day in them, because it's like Scott was saying earlier, the numbers are ridiculous. Even if he's not at his peak, he's still at a peak. Like you said yesterday, Dave, on the show that we did with Gordon, that his peak is still much higher than anyone else. Or maybe 2 or 3 players, if you want to get into that argument. I still have him as the best. If he's not as good as what he was, he's still better than everyone. So he's got to make a positive difference. Of course, he's got to make a positive difference. You saw today, even with Cavani coming on, it wasn't like a massive difference, but just even if it's a different intelligence of runs, even if it's a better intelligence, just a different intelligence, a different way of playing. And Ronaldo is just a goal machine. He knows how to find space. The best thing is, Scott's right. There was a lot of difference with Ronaldo in that 2-year period, right, where he was changing the way that he played. And Rennie Mullenstein told me a story. I think he told everyone really about it. The period where Ronaldo was out for a couple of games and they spent some time training together. And he said, don't keep trying to score the perfect goal, just score every goal. And Ronaldo changed and he became a monster. Like, he was scoring if you got into Old Trafford late, United were 2-0 up and Ronaldo scored them both, and you were waiting to match of the day to see what he'd done. And it was usually something brilliant. But he changed, and that didn't mean that he couldn't do the things that he did before, because he was still the best player in the league doing what he did. He just went, no, do you know what? Sod it. I've had it with you guys. I'm just going to do what I can do. I'm going to run through you like a freight train. And he did. And he's been doing it for 15 years. So I don't have any doubt that he can do that sort of stuff. But he just changed into this mentality monster. And like Scott was saying, you can see with Mason Greenwood that he's a player that picks things up. You can see with the way that he finishes that he watched Solskjaer finish. So imagine being around Ronaldo every day. It's gonna elevate a lot of different things. So a long answer, Dave. You know that I always give them. I'm never going to give a short one. But I think that we can. I honestly think that we can, because that's what the excitement level I've got from. That's what happens when you buy one of the best players that's ever lived. You've got to think like that. And Ollie's got to think like that. Ollie doesn't, and he will know this because he's a ruthless guy himself. Regardless of what people say, oh, he's not ruthless. He is ruthless. I think Scott said it on Stell's show when he was on recently. He's a ruthless guy behind the scenes. He makes decisions. So he will know what signing Ronaldo means for his own position. It means that he has to deliver. I'm not saying definitely win the title. You can't guarantee winning the title every season. We didn't with Ronaldo in the side. We just did it more often than not. Now the expectation is that we're going to deliver. Without that holding midfielder, it doesn't really matter. I'd like to see one, but we're going to see something different. We're not going to see what we saw last season. It's going to be different because we've got different players. We've got Cavani, who's going to be there all the time. Most of the time, you would presume. You've got Sancho, who's fixing an area, and you've got Ronaldo, the one of the greatest players that's ever lived. It's going to change everything with the way that we attack. And that could compensate for all manner. Like I was saying earlier about with Carrick, everyone was saying that's not going to win us a title. And it did. So we don't know. And you know what? I'm all in on Solskjaer. You know that I am. And the last couple of years, the 4 years before that were the worst football that we've ever seen. And Solskjaer's brought United back. He's brought the identity back. And the ride has been a lot better. And what a ride we've got for us in the next 12 months. Today, it's almost, you could say, typical United. I'm not there. I'm not convinced, like you guys have said it perfectly in the first 10 minutes of this, that it wasn't old United to win a game like we did. Scoring a late goal was, but not in the fashion we did it. So that is a concern. You can't sustain performances like that and challenge for a league title. But it's going to be different with Ronaldo, and I don't know how. I believe that we can do it, and that is literally down to the Ronaldo effect. So we'll see. I'm buzzing for it, and it's going to be fun talking about it with you guys.
Scott, title contenders or chasing pack?
I completely agree with exactly what Wayne just said. If you'd have asked this a week ago, I would have said chasing pack. I just didn't. I think Sancho and Varane improved them immensely, and the only reason I say that is I think the levels of the other teams are so high. Look at City's squad, Liverpool's squad, Chelsea's squad. Chelsea have got an incredible squad, really.
Yeah.
But I just think, you look at the impact, like you said, Cavani had. Look at the impact Bruno had on the team when he came. And I think the impact them three players, especially Ronaldo, like I say, he can make the difference. Goal scorer is the hardest. It's the most important thing in football. It sounds stupid and simple, but it is, and he's the best at it. And I just think now, I think you have to say they'll be right up there. A week ago, I would have said, I think it's between Chelsea, City, and Liverpool. But I think United now can definitely win the league with Ronaldo. If Ronaldo plays 35 games, 30 games, Varane stays fit. If United's 1-11, I think is right up there. I don't think they've got as squad as the other three I've just mentioned. But I think their 1-11 is real top. Obviously, with the lacking that one real defensive-minded midfielder. And also, I was going to butt in before, but I didn't want to. On the midfield situation, what Ollie does as well, if you noticed, I think today people are obviously talking about it wasn't a great performance, and Wolves were counter-attacking loads, and because the midfield was empty, because that's what obviously you get when Pogba plays in there, because he drifts and he's not disciplined, and that won't change. But what he does in the big games, he goes with 2 out of 3 of Matic, McTominay, and Fred, doesn't he? And he plays Pogba on the left. I think he left them out of one of the big games once, maybe a City game.
City it was, yeah.
Yeah, so I think Pogba can play midfield against at home, especially at home, and against the lesser teams, again, without being disrespectful. But like you say, all he knows is stuff. He's ruthless. If he has to drop Pogba for a big game and play 2 of the 3 more disciplined and go a little bit more cautious, he's done that. So he won't be afraid of. Sorry, I've gone off topic there, but yeah, I think now with the Ronaldo signing, no doubt they could win the league. Absolutely no doubt.
We got another question in from Kevin. Now with Ronaldo, and this has kind of been the buzz over the past couple of days. Now that Ronaldo has come to Manchester United, Scott, do you think Pogba signs a new deal?
I mean, it's obviously it would be how he sees the club, but I think this transfer window has done him absolutely no harm of thinking that Man United are really going places. And
sorry, the reason I say that is because his agent, every time he talks, his agent kind of hints towards, well, Manchester United are not ambitious enough. We had this situation with Rooney many years ago, where he said the club wasn't ambitious enough, and he ended up staying, and we went out that summer and bought a lot of players. This is really calling Pogba out now, isn't it? Saying, hey, according to your agent, which is probably what you're thinking, the club hasn't been ambitious enough. Now they brought in 2 world-class players and probably the best player, in the world. So sorry to interrupt you, but that's the reason why I think we're asking the question is that does that change his opinion?
I think it has to, yeah. I don't think you can get any more ambitious. Varane is probably the one centre-back who's been there, done it, won everything, ticks all the boxes like I spoke about before as a profile of a central defender. They've gone out and they've got him. Sancho's numbers are also off the scale in terms of assists and goals. They've gone out and got him. He's young, he's English. That's what Man United have always done. They've always gone and got big English young players. And Ronaldo obviously speaks for itself. So I don't think you can get any more ambitious from the club. They've identified the spots and they've gone for the best players in that area. So to answer your question, Dave, yeah, I don't see why. That's not an excuse for him anymore. Then, is it? You can't come out and say they're not being. You can't get any more ambitious than signing Cristiano Ronaldo. Just you can't. So
yeah, there's only really two players really. It's either Ronaldo or Messi. You can't. Yeah. Your ambition can't go any higher than those two.
100%. So yeah, no, you can't. That excuse has completely gone off the table now from his agent. Has to.
One of the things that Wayne had mentioned earlier on, and it's something that I've also felt as well, is that he said that between Mourinho and Louis van Gaal, the football was absolutely atrocious. We know Mourinho came in and blew the place up. He poured gasoline on everything, to use an American term. I'm sorry. He poured petrol on everything and just blew it all up and walked away. Since then, I've certainly felt over the past couple of years, I'm starting to see, Manchester United have all come back. Ollie has done, a hell of a lot with the youth team. He's done a hell of a lot internally in the club. He's gotten rid of the players that didn't really want to be there, and were, making it very vocal that they didn't want to be there. So that falls into the rootlessness that people don't seem to think Ollie is. At the end of the day, Alex Ferguson never, ever, very rarely in his whole management career talk badly about players in front of the camera. Social media seems to think that when Fred's having a bad game, the best way to resolve it is the manager to come out and slate him on social media. You as a current professional player, Scott, I'm sure that doesn't. If your manager comes out and goes, "Oh my God, he was terrible, he was horrible today," that's not going to help you at all. I'm sure Ollie is in the dressing room saying, "Come on, we got to raise the game, we got to raise the level," but always go in front of the camera and back your player. I'm 100% behind that. So it's a long way to get around to the question. But do you think Ollie gets the credit that he truly deserves for having us? Jason has asked this question as well. Does he get the credit he deserves from everyone? And social media is a big bucket of mess. You get one half that will say no, and one half say, what? As a current professional, who's played for the club, who's been at the club, who's played under Ollie, do you think he gets the praise he deserves?
No, I don't think he gets anywhere near enough. I've seen Jason just said there the club was in a real mess, and it probably was really in terms of recruitment, style of play. It comes so far off track what United sort of stood for under Alex Ferguson. And I think you said that it's getting back that way. They're playing better football. The recruitment is. I always used to think, how many players would have signed under Ferguson that signed Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho? And there's not many really. I think it was he wouldn't have signed Fellaini, Alex Ferguson. He wouldn't have signed Mata. I don't think they needed Mata. Van Gaal, he wouldn't. I think he probably might have signed Di Maria. I think if he'd have had the shackles off him, I know he didn't do great for United, but I think again that coincided with the style of play that Van Gaal had put under him. Very strict and very limited to what he could do. I think in this team now, I think he'd be superb. Someone like Di Maria. I think the only reason he needs to win something to really get credit. That's the thing. I think if he wins the FA Cup this year, or if he wins the League Cup, the first cup isn't it in February time, it'd be like a big burden off his back, and he's finally won that first trophy and all that. I think that's what it would take before he gets real credit. But I mean, the direction the club was going in before he took over, and we're talking about some of the, especially Van Gaal and Mourinho, two of the most successful managers out there. So they're not bad managers in terms of the record and the clubs they've managed and the jobs they've done at other clubs. But obviously, it just didn't work. I think United's a unique club. It's you can't just go, and it's got certain things that it stands for in terms of the style of play, the recruitment, all the things that keep popping up. And I think Ollie, he's fixed it. Yeah, he hasn't won anything yet. But again, in all that time, while United didn't know what path they were on, City were going like that. Liverpool had 4 years of building on the Klopp, so it's going to take time. It's not just a case of we've signed two players, or Ollie's been there 2 years now. He should be winning the league. These things take, like I say, it's Klopp 4 years. Liverpool were in a mess before he went. Chelsea have now had spent fortunes on. Got a really good squad, so it's not that easy to say. Look, he has to win something now. He's coming up to 4 years, I think, is he? But it takes time, and he's finally got them. You can see where they're trying to go. They're signing younger players, they're developing the players, they're bringing players through. Greenwood, I know Mourinho played Rashford, but and McTominay, but there wasn't many others. He's given more debuts to the youngsters. He knows what the club. He'll be constantly to be a link throughout the whole club because he knows what it stands for. Obviously, through his time with Alex Ferguson, and I think he's done it. He definitely go back to the question. I don't think he does get enough credit. I think he's done a fantastic job, and I think he needs to run something now to buy him more time. I know he's just signed a new contract, but to get everything off his back, and the social media stuff. I think that's just part and parcel. I think he does a good job in media. I mean, it must be a little bit not difficult for him, but all pundits after games and fans are saying, like you say, you're spot on. He can't come out and hold Wales against Fred, say, for example. He's not going to come out and kick him even lower. He's going to back his players. And as a player, that's what you want to see from your manager. Social media can be a tough place at times for all players. Like you say, one week you're the best player in the world, the next week you're not good enough, you should go. And that's just the nature of social media, and that can happen. But your manager's the one person. Listen, you might say something completely different in the dressing room, like you say, but what goes on in the dressing room stays in the dressing room. Coming out in interviews and stuff, you want to be backed by your manager, and you want him to stand up for you. And I think he does that very well. It's because he does get some difficult questions at times. So
Lars asked a question which has been floating around on social media now for a couple of weeks now, since we signed Varane. I'm going to ask the question, but you're a centre back. They're asking, could we turn Lindelof into a central midfielder, with that defensive mind, or is it, is it a much bigger deal than people, think, that to go from being a centre back to centre midfield at that moment in his career? If he's 12, 13, 14 years of age, a lot of world-class players that are playing today, a large portion of them didn't start their career in the position that they're in. We read about that all the time. They were a defender, they were a midfielder, all of a sudden now they're a striker, or they were a striker, they were put back as a defender, and it just worked. Lindelof, to me, I'd need to take more medication to curb my anxiety, I think. I'd have to go and, it's watching him in central midfield every week. But, I mean, I may be unfair. Is it an easy transition to go from centre back to centre midfield? And do you think Lindelof is one of those players?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be down to obviously the coaches and what they see in training and working with him. But I agree. I think if you're even as late as early 20s, maybe as a late teenager, 18, 19, you could possibly learn. But I think in your where he is in his career, I think it'd be very difficult. I was trying to think of other examples of trying to think of players who have completely changed position. I couldn't think of many really off the top of my head. So it would be very difficult, no, for sure. It's completely different. Going from centre back, the whole game's in front of you with the ball. You only have to really, your surroundings, you're comfortable. You've got your full back one side, your other centre back the other. Like I say, the whole game where you see it is in front. To go midfield, I mean, I played there a handful of times as a sitting midfielder, and it's completely different. You've got to have eyes in the back of your head. You've got to be constantly looking over your shoulders. The game feels a lot faster in there. You've got to have, to be fair, I do think he's good on the ball in the loft. So I think he could handle the ball. He'd be decent enough on the ball. But again, you've got to have different range of passing. You've got to see the game differently. You've got to be cleverer. So it's certainly not easy, but I'm not sure I see that one really. I think it'd take a while.
Final question. Morecambe get drawn against Manchester United in one of the cups either this season or next season. How are you handling Ronaldo?
Piece of cake. No, I'm only joking. It's just impossible, isn't it? I mean, I don't think there's anyone who's ever. The only player I remember doing well against him, and possibly because it was Ashley Cole when he was a winger. I remember Ashley Cole for England doing really well against them in a tournament when he played for Portugal and when he was at Chelsea and Arsenal. Done well against them. But it's just the type of player you might probably think, he's not really doing much and keeping quiet, and then he scored 2 goals like that, 2 chances, 2 goals. So he doesn't even need a proper chance. Sometimes he just makes it himself, doesn't he? He's just what he does. And I mean, like I think you were saying earlier, David, to the fans would be worried. Imagine how some of the defenders are thinking coming up against him. But again, there'll be games where he probably won't do an awful. I've watched them for Real Madrid and Juventus quite a bit the last few years in Champions League games and stuff, and sometimes he is quite quiet. He might not touch the ball for a few minutes, but he's such a predator, and he's so focused on goals and making the difference and making the impact in the game. That won't bother him. You see some players come and drop deep to, they feel like they're getting bored in the game possibly and they need to get involved. He just doesn't see, he's just so ruthless and wants to score goals and wants to win. And, you know, like I say, as a defender, you might think, and that happens all the time. You think you come up against a player who you think's a good player and you think, I'm doing well here, I'm keeping him quiet. And all of a sudden, one chance, goal, and the name's all over the papers and they're getting all the headlines. And again, as a defender, you could play really, really well, and the striker, you might make one little lapse of concentration, one mistake, and the striker scores, and you've had a really bad game. The striker's had a really good game. When the truth is, for 85 minutes, it might not be that, and he's not bothered about that one bit. He is just ruthless.
Well, in my opinion, I think he needs to be more concerned about you than you need to be about him if you come up against each other. So. Scott, I appreciate you coming on. I really do. I think this is going to be some. We're going to have some fun throughout the season. We're going to cry a lot. We're going to laugh a lot. But it's great to have you on, Wayne. As always, it's great to have you on. Anything in the pipeline at the moment, book-wise? You want to let us know about?
No, but obviously with the Ronaldo thing, everyone's been bombing me for it. Yeah, everyone, like, just constantly. When's the book coming? When's the book coming? When's the book coming? He signed within 12 minutes. My agent's calling me, you know, we need to talk when the bank holiday's over. I'm like, oh man, you know, I'm working as it is. We're working now. We're doing stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously I'd love to do that. I'm working on loads of stuff, you know, working with Sammy McElroy at the moment. That's a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll get him on a show or two over the season. I'm actually just enjoying the rest from writing to talk to you guys. It's really good. And I agree with you, Davo. But I don't fancy Cristiano's chances are coming up against Scott. So I hope we avoid Morecambe for that reason. Yeah, so it's just some great points there that you guys have made. It's just great to have Scott on and great to talk about, especially Ronaldo, because he knew him, you know, he's observed him and everything like that. So it's, great stuff.
So unfortunately, you know, we have the international break, which always seems to happen with Manchester United when we get something good going for us, like a good win or a signing. All of a sudden, boom, international break. So we're going to have to wait, 2 weeks. But what an atmosphere it's going to be on September 11th against Newcastle. Before we finish, when I think about that, I got one final question for you two guys, and we can make it quick. Scott. Yeah. We've seen the Chelsea manager. He bought Lukaku, put him straight in. Boom. He plays football for a living. We paid 100 million. In you go, which I think is great. All I seem to, with Varane and Sancho, for different reasons, he betted them in, and we can kind of see from Sancho today that he might need a little bit more, interaction on the training pitch to fully get, how we play. The best player in the world. Do we throw him straight in?
Oh yeah, no doubt, absolutely no doubts. He doesn't need any bedding in. Why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? I just don't see. He's played. I'm not sure he's played, but he'd be fully fit. Has he played a couple of games for Juventus? I know he made it clear.
I think he's playing during the week as well. He's actually playing against Ireland in international.
Yeah, so he'll play for Portugal. He'll be match fit. He's obviously an incredible athlete anyway. He won't need to gain minutes. He doesn't sprint around like he used to anyway, so that won't be an issue. I don't see how he doesn't play.
Wayne, do we throw him straight in? I mean, I think I know your answer. I mean, I woke up to, 400 messages from you on Friday morning because I'm 8 hours behind. I know how excited you were to see Ronaldo. Do we just throw him straight in? I personally think so, but Ollie has in the past when we've had new signings, he's bedded them in, and other managers do the same thing. We're talking about something different here, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, he might do. He might sort of give him the chance to sort of come on and get that standing ovation, but he'll get it from the start. Put him straight in, improve your chances of winning the game from the kickoff. A different way to answer this, obviously, because he knows United anyway. He knows the Premier League, so he's knowing what to expect. And also remember, we had a little experiment with Ibrahimovic a couple of years ago, and he was at a similar stage in his career, and he tore up the Premier League.
Yeah.
And Ronaldo's better than him, so don't worry. And Ronaldo will have better service than him, so put him straight in. You've got to, because that's a massive occasion. It's like the Rooney debut. You know, as soon as you knew Rooney was fit and he was going to play, Fergie had no. You've got the kind of like adrenaline of the occasion. You know, he said this is not just. With all due respect to Varane and Sancho, were amazing signings. Two of the best signings that we've made for a long time, as Scott said. Ronaldo's it's a global event, so you start him. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, beautiful. I'm in agreement with you both. I think we should just throw him straight in. It's not as if he doesn't know what he's doing, you know. Again, I want to thank everyone for chipping in. We had a couple of questions, which was great. Scott, again, appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy. Wayne, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. We really would appreciate that. And if you're listening on the podcast, please give us a rating and review. And also be sure to check out talkingtodevils.co.uk. And if you haven't already, and I have, click on Morecambe as your second favourite team on any of the sports app you use to get all the updates and the latest. So I'm sure Scott will, throughout the season, give us, more updates on how Morecambe are doing. I really wish you guys the best of luck. I'd love to see you in the championship, and then who knows from there. We've seen teams go from the old 4th division all the way up to the 1st division. Well, we'll call it the 2nd division all the way up to the Premiership. It happens. So the best of luck to you for the rest of the season. And Wayne, as always, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate everyone's time.